This
meeting is being recorded.
There we go. So yeah, thank you all for coming. Today we're going to go through tips for selling SEO. So this is by no means going to be an exhaustive list of how, from beginning to end, how to sell SEO, right? Because that's a mammoth task. So really what I've done is I've put together a presentation that touches upon some of the key areas. It's not going to touch upon everything, but hopefully it touches upon some key areas. And really what I'd like, if you guys would like to as well, is it to be less of a presentation and more of a discussion. So if anyone's got any thoughts as we're going along, it'd be really good actually if people can kind of chime in. Because we'll go through different tactics or different, not tactics so much, but parts of the SEO sales process. And, you know, if you've got experience in that, or if you've got any questions, just to ask us kind of as we go along, rather than leaving it all to the end, because I think things will probably pop up in everyone's head as they go along. So does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. Good stuff. First question, who here isn't selling SEO at the moment? Okay, I've got Jim.
Not really, no.
Amanda, you're not really. So are you kind of, or?
I've done it for one client. But it was somebody I know, and it has been successful. And I'm also doing it on my site, which needs quite a bit of work. So I just want to get it sold out to new customers, really.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And then Jim, so you've not sold any SEO?
Yeah, not for a while. I responded to your email, and I had some issues with some of my subcontractors, and but we do create content mostly in logistics in the US, and so we're doing SEO keywords for every article that we write.
Yeah. I think that's kind of, I guess, one of the things in the presentation is selling SEO doesn't have to be just selling SEO. It's how can you package it up and bundle it, I guess, into what you're already doing, right? Because you probably, even with just doing web design, there's SEO parts that you'll probably do in there as well, content creation, so many bits that touch upon SEO. So it's like, how can you package that? Okay, all right. Okay, well, look, I'll share my slides. I'll start the sharing, and then we can go from there. Right. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right,
it's your bank account, is that correct?
Yeah, you should have the PIN number next to it as well. Right, okay. So, selling SEO, top tips and ideas. So just first thing, I always like to go on Google Trends and just search like SEO agency, just because obviously it's important for us for Hike. It's like, is the demand for SEO, what's the demand for SEO doing if you search SEO or SEO agency? This is a 5-year graph for the US, but for the UK it was fairly similar for people that search SEO. And you can just see like from 2017 up to now, it's the highest it's been, which is really interesting. That's, I guess, does anyone else seeing that? Are you getting more requests for SEO now than ever before?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you're doing that. Okay, that's interesting. And you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next few months. You know, with the economic factors that are happening at the minute, you know, will that be like a COVID scenario where it increases SEO, or will we pull back on marketing spend? So be interesting to see what happens with this graph. But look, SEO is definitely in demand, or it's more in demand now than it has been over the last 5 years. So as good a time as anyone ever to start thinking about selling it or to look at your sales process.
And it would be really good to see whether there's a correlation between the growth in people using site builders as well, because I find they're the ones that need SEO more than anything, because they don't design their site, they just build it without any real thought.
So people come to you after they've already built their site, like a Wix,
yeah,
or Shopify.
because it's not working.
Got you. And how do you also build websites as well?
Oh yeah.
And
But it's a different process because we'll have all the exploratory talks beforehand.
Yeah, and do you find is the SEO sales process, how does it differ for someone that comes to you that's already built a website?
The biggest challenge is that the people that built a website themselves with a site builder usually have done it on a shoestring and, are not really prepared for what it's going to cost them to make it work.
So they're not prepared for the SEO budget?
Yeah.
And how do you get around that? Do you just turn them away if they're too small?
No, we offer them a low entry option just to prove to them that, small chunks show them that it works.
Yeah, interesting. Does anyone else here have that same issue?
I have a parallel example. Could I just ask a similar observation? I'd like to see that chart against other generic terms like social media or online marketing, see how that is trending, and are they trending in the same direction, and it's a reflection of the whole online marketing industry with more demand, or is one of them going down and organic tools and skills are needed as opposed to social media skills? So that could be quite an interesting thing to look at. But as a parallel to what Paul just shared, I'm actually working with a digital agency at the moment who build websites and do pay-per-click and have offered limited SEO services, but they thought they knew what they were doing. And as an example, they would do keyword research to help write some content for their blogs. But since we've got involved with them, we're finding cannibalization left, right, and center. And they really had their eyes opened as to it isn't just about keyword research, it's about structuring and planning the content. And now, a bit like people who have built their own websites, and they've got to kind of start all over again, or they've got to, from an SEO point of view, got to redesign it. They're finding that even though they built this really good looking website and they put SEO thoughts into it, it's backfiring on them, and they've got to clean up. And this is a company who thought they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Two points. What I find, and you guys probably got it right, is that a lot of the website builders now, they use the messaging like built-in SEO. So your website becomes SEO optimized. And I guess it depends how you define SEO, right? They're defining it in a very loose term. They're defining it in a way which is, you have the ability to update page titles, meta description.
Yeah, it's got SEO features.
Yeah, right. And I think that gives people a false sense of security when it comes to SEO, because they're like, well, on the Wix website, it said my site was going to come SEO optimized already. So that's a kind of an interesting thing there. And maybe that's the same for agencies as well, right? So like the PPC agency. But then another point, and I didn't actually put it down in this presentation, but now you mention it, Colin, I used to freelance. So I went from agency to agency. I went in-house and I went freelance. And one of the ways that I built my client base, and it's a good way if you want to build a client base, is to look to partner with other agencies that don't do SEO, right? So Colin, you say you're partnered with a PPC agency there. But yeah, if you've got any friends that are web designers, any friends that do, or any local agencies, you could always go to those guys, right? I mean, I had a lot of success doing that. Because they're always looking for SEO and they don't mind outsourcing it. They'd rather outsource it to someone. Face-to-face is always best for stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's a good tactic as well if you want to grow your leads.
I would agree on that for sure. I've partnered with a local one, but he's quite international. He's off to Brussels, America in the next 2-3 weeks. Mm-hmm. And all he does basically is television adverts, newspaper advertising, and like billboard advertising. He doesn't offer any sort of digital side of it. Look, why don't you pass your clients across me? I'll do the socials, PPC and SEO work for them. And if you need it, web development. And I'm getting a hell of a lot of business from him now, just for website, like web development and stuff. But he seems to be passing on more and more SEO work to us at the moment. So it's definitely worth speaking to some more, what I would class probably traditional marketeers. You can pick up a hell of a lot of them.
Yeah, Yeah, no, great. I'm glad it's working for both of you, but it's definitely a route to look down because it's obviously worked for Ross and for Colin. Okay, so let's go in then onto the beginning of it. I've put section 1, and it's not really sales, but I think it's kind of a prerequisite to any good sales processes. Just know the products you're going to sell. So the reason I kind of say that is because I feel like there's 2 ways you can sell. Not 2 ways. There's a continuum almost like, and we probably all fit along it how we sell some customers. You can be really strict with packages. You can be like, I sell these 1, 2, 3 SEO packages, and I'm not going to deviate from them. So whatever your SEO needs, they have to fit into these packages. But then there's the other side where actually you completely tailor your SEO product based on what they need. You know, actually they need this and they need this. Perhaps they don't need content creation. They don't need this. So you make it very flexible. Now, how you work and how you decide to sell SEO is completely up to you. I think what we do at Hike and what we've moved to is it's very hard to scale when you're at the flexibility side. You know, when you're very flexible and each client has building a different package, a different SEO product for each one, it's kind of hard to scale. You want a bit more rigidity in terms of the products you sell and actually put the client into one of them. I find personally, as I've done SEO freelance and as we've done it for Hike, that makes life a little bit easier just to manage. Has anyone got any thoughts on that? Do you find that you have on one side of the scale rather than the other, and what works and what doesn't?
I've got a generic, literally just like a scope of work, which I stick to with every single client. Any inquiry that comes through, I'll send it across to them in an email, all nice and professional, up and saying, this is what you get. This is what you get for this price. This is what you get for this price. It includes the hours and what sort of work we'll look to do for them, and what we expect to achieve within that time frame.
Mm-hmm. And how many do you offer? How many products are there they can choose between?
So they've got the do-it-yourself,
with,
and then they've also got the done for you, and there's just the 3 packages: 5 hours a month, 10 hours a month, or 15 hours.
Okay.
And I just stick with that, and then most of them go for the 5 hours a month, just simply for cost reasons. But 9 times out of 10, I'll always have an extra hour of work in there for them, no extra cost, just as a little sweetener as such.
Yeah. Is there anyone here that doesn't do that? Is there anyone here that builds a bespoke SEO package?
Yeah, we do. We use the Hike product for some of our smaller clients. So we combine that with a bit of consultancy each month. So they get access to the Hike platform. And each month we might do a 1-hour call to go through how the campaign's performing as a whole, and to provide some insights in terms of what they could be doing better. But we also do the bespoke work, and what we're trying to do is move away from hours and price on value. Because with SEO, I think, you know, it's sometimes difficult to try and measure or try and assess how many hours you're going to need to put into the campaign until you've done some of the first stages in terms of doing that audit, doing the competitor landscape analysis to see what your client is up against. So, you know, with some of our larger clients, we'll do it on value because we understand that the search channel is far more important for them than, say, other channels. And in terms of the value that it can bring to their business, in terms of helping them grow their revenue streams, we're trying to do it in that way.
So once I completely understand that. So you're auditing what needs to be done, where they're at, where they're ranking, how far away they are from what they need to achieve. To then decide what packaging. But then once you've done that and you understand, how are you building those packages? You say value, not hours. So you're not.
I mean, we'll have a rough idea in terms of what we need to do. But for instance, when it comes to writing content, you know, there's long form and short form. So for instance, if we're writing a white paper that might take, I don't know, a week to research and then a week to write, and looking as using that as a sort of content piece and then sort of promoting that online to sort of drive awareness, which will help with sort of social shares and backlinks. Trying to measure that in terms of how much time you're likely to spend on, first of all, you know, sort of doing the research and writing that, and then obviously the long-term value of that piece of content, because, you know, you may be able to get additional mileage out of that in terms of sharing it with people outside of the search channel. So we tend to focus more on, right, what in terms of the overall sort of search channel, what value can we achieve for you in the kind of short, medium, and long term? In terms of how will the search channel drive sales, and what proportion of sales will search deliver for your business? So if you're going from if you're a business that's relatively new to the search channel and they haven't done a lot, then obviously the opportunity to scale up faster is quite great. You might find that some clients are more mature, so it's all about fine tuning. So again, what I'm trying to do is get my clients to think about, in terms of the digital marketing mix, where do you want to invest? What's driving good conversions? Because that's quite key, because you can sort of embark on a number of different marketing campaigns, and as we know, traffic is great, but if that traffic doesn't convert, then it's not going to deliver a positive ROI. So we're trying to be a bit more strategic in terms of helping them to define that mix, of which search is part of that mix, and then assessing the value. So for instance, if they're ranking high for a certain number of key phrases that drive a good commercial return over a long period of time, then that's worth more to them than the hours we would bill.
Okay. Yeah. So so you don't sell. So am I right then thinking you wouldn't sell SEO as a standalone product?
No.
So it's part. Okay. Is there anyone here who does sell SEO as a standalone product? I guess Ross, based on those packages, you probably do, right?
Yeah.
Colin?
But yeah, maybe I didn't understand the question, but I'm totally in Damon's corner. But we only do SEO, or even narrower, just do content. So, but my background says I would always talk about return on investment and some language that we've recently, but we're not trying to package it up with anything else. Okay. So it's all about content research or content optimization, and all services that relate to that. And Hike sits nicely in the background there as that kind of, so I've told you guys, we don't use Hike for all aspects of our workflow. But what I love about what Hike does is it gives me that dashboard to keep the managing, keeps the crawl related to that client, keeps the actions specific to that client without the same sort of interpretation and analysis I do. But I absolutely love the Harrow side, because that's a way of saying, well, we don't do backlinks, but our SEO buddy platform does. That's just what we call it. And so that's really good. But going back to what Damon was saying, my language up front is all about content is an asset, plain business language about, when you create a piece of content, that's intellectual property that belongs to you and should be, just like a property needs maintaining, content needs maintaining, it will decay over time, that sort of language, as opposed to we're going to work 3 or 4 hours on this month, etc., etc. So when we're putting our proposals together, similar to what Ross does, we put an outline that says, this is what we'll do, this is what you can expect, this is what it includes, and this is what it excludes. And then that leads, and I haven't got formal documents with, e-signatures. It's a hacked together email that's been built over time with the things we think work, and send it out, templated it. And all we really change is there's a little bit of qualifying questions at the beginning, which means at the beginning of the proposal email, we personalize it to, based on what you told us, this is what our understanding is, but the rest is all templated.
Yeah, and
that's just the same with us.
Yeah,
as I think you probably took from my email last night.
Yeah, which we'll come on to, and then just quickly on there, Colin. Yeah, whenever I did SEO before, everything was just an email proposal. It was written out, it was personalized, it was tips to them, reply to this email if you want to go ahead. That always worked just absolutely fine from an SEO point of view. There wasn't any need for a particular DocuSign or anything like that. But I don't know, and every agency is different, but I did this.
It's an interesting point you bring up there, Andrew, because I am thinking, in the past when I was trying to perfect getting everything right before I got going and got first clients, I was thinking, I need like a proposal, platform.
Yeah.
But the more I'm going down this personalization route, I'm thinking less. I even headed up long email warning. This email is a proposal. But it's real, like it's authentic, you know, and it's not a PDF document. And you know, maybe as we move up the food chain, we might need to do that a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, just as a kind of in a similar vein, when we do like email marketing, tried loads of different email marketing for Hike in the past, and originally started off, you know, the email template builders, you know, where you build these beautiful emails with, you know, your header and you've got blocks, and there's like a HTML design thing, right? And then you do that, and we just never really got any results. And then you just switch to doing plain emails, just plain emails, just regular thing, and you just get so much better reply rate, reply rate basically, because people just kind of want that real thing. And I think that kind of correlates there to what we're seeing with, you know, just sending through, you know, just what you want, that SEO proposal. It doesn't need to be that fancy stuff, and it's quicker, right? It's quicker and cheaper, so why not? All right, cool. We're probably going to go back on a lot of this stuff, so I'm just going to move on for a second. Let's minimize this. So yeah, we'll move on to this hours deliverables thing. I think we should come back to it. I think Damon and Colin, you've touched upon something there. You're not doing it hours based, and I'd be interested in learning a bit more, but I kind of want to move on a little bit. I put a post up on Facebook group only last night, just saying like, what was one thing that you wish you would have known before selling SEO that you know now? And both from there, I mean, ignoring point number 2, is pricing structures and how to price. So it brings on to this question, which kind of touched on it: pricing, hours, or keywords. And let's talk about keywords, because traditionally, if any of you have ever done SEO, or you might have done it, for the people that do sell SEO here, have you ever sold it just on keywords, like keyword rankings? Or, you know, we'll optimize 10 keywords for $500 a month, 20 keywords for $1,000 a month. Has anyone tried that? No. Okay. Yeah, it's, you know, when I was first in SEO, about however many years ago, it was that way. And they sold, the agency I worked at sold that way. And actually, some big agencies do now. We're on a marketplace called Vendasta. And the big competitors, the big delivery people on there that do like millions a month, they sell SEO, but they sell it in terms of keywords. So people pay like $400, $300 a month to optimize 3 keywords or 5 keywords, whatever it may be. So you might come across this, and you might come across, you know, you'll go to a client and they'll be like, actually, this agency has proposed that they're going to optimize 10 keywords. How many keywords are you going to optimize? And I guess just the way I'll tell you how I respond to it in case it's helpful to any of you guys kind of moving forwards, is the thing about, I find very strange about saying that, you know, an SEO campaign will optimize 5 keywords is that kind of means you're only going to try and optimize a certain part of the website, 5 pages, 3 pages, whatever it might be that house those 3 keywords. But as we all know, SEO doesn't work that way, or Google doesn't work that way. I always say that, like, if you want, you can't just optimize 5, for the sake of argument, 5 pages on the website and ignore the rest, because Google looks at the site as a whole. And if those other rest of those sites are crap, Google's not going to rank those 5 pages, which means that you have to optimize the whole site to a good level anyway, you know. So it doesn't make sense to optimize just for a certain number of keywords, because you're going to have to optimize the whole website. You're going to have good content. You're going to have good technical SEO, good page speed everywhere. So you can't just optimize 5 pages and there you go. And I find that if I communicate that, people seem to understand. People seem to understand that, and they're like, and it makes sense. So yeah, just a tip there. If you ever get that, that's one way of communicating back, where people are like, okay, yeah, this is like 5 keywords, 10 keywords, etc. So
Andrew, in your, like, where you said pricing hours or keywords, and you've given that specific example,
yes,
is that different from selling keyword research? Because ours is where we have sold keyword research as a standalone service, where we are preaching the same thing, that you have to optimize the site and the way Google works, pillar content, topic clusters, but not all our clients need or want ongoing content optimization. But the body of keyword research sets them up for a content plan, sets them up for repurposing. So we do our keyword research on a framework, and like I said, we propose it will include this, this, and this. But it does allow them to just invest partly in SEO and then go off and do it on their own.
Yeah.
And but that's different from what you're saying.
Yeah. What I'm referring to when people sell SEO based on, for $500 a month package, we'll optimize 5.
That's
and we'll get those 5 keywords ranking, and we're not going to track or try and get any other keywords ranking.
Okay. So when you you can sell keywords. Well, in our case, it's keyword research rather than keyword.
Yeah, exactly. You're not promising to get the 5 and 5.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Yeah. So, and the next one, I don't know if any of you guys have come across this, and it's interesting. I spoke to an agency recently using Hike, who don't charge for SEO until they get the keywords right. Have any of you guys heard of this or done anything like this, or been tempted to do this? Lots of shaking heads. Yeah, David's like, no way.
No way.
Yeah. So yeah, it still happens, right? It still happens where, there's a few ways that people do it. Some ways people do it say, we won't charge you until we get X keywords on page 1. Or we'll charge you for 6 months. And then if you're not on page 1, it's free until we get you on page 1. You do get a lot of that. My advice, as you can probably imagine, is don't do it. It can be a horror story because, again, very old agency, worked on, they used to do it. And then you get through a site that just had so many penalties, so many issues, it was impossible to rank it. And we basically had to do it for free. It was a year and a half, 2 years. And eventually they just left anyway because we want to get involved. So yeah, stay away from those. If you do it, not saying how, but do it for very, very low volume, low competition keywords. And I think that's what this agency was doing basically. So, I understand that. So I'm just going to go back because the point that I made up here was pricing hours or keywords. And Damon, I just want to come back to you because you're actually like, it's not hours, it's not keywords, it's value.
Yeah.
So can you just give us an example of how you price a campaign based on value? Yeah,
the first phase, which we can cost up as a standalone project, we kind of define as audit, research, and strategy. Mm-hmm. It's a bit like taking your car into the mechanic. So there's a problem with my car until he starts to look underneath the bonnet and assess what's wrong. Then he's not going to be able to give you a price to fix the problem that you're facing. So we're very much led by kind of data, and doing the proper research to understand what's working, what's not working, what's the competitor landscape look like, how competitive are certain keywords, and what else is going on that we can't influence, because there are a lot of external factors involved in SEO that we don't have any direct influence over. So we would do that as a standalone project, and then at the end of that process, we'll have a conversation with clients to understand what resources they've got in-house that we can leverage. Do they have content writers? Do they have, how much responsibility and ownership do they have of the website? Can we make technical changes? So once we've done that audit, we'll have a better idea in terms of what the certain tactical components are that will make up an ongoing campaign. Mm-hmm. And to some degree, we can charge for content writing by the hour if it's straightforward stuff. But as an agency, we're trying to move away from that model. There's another good company called, I went on a seminar a couple of weeks ago, and they're talking about moving away from tiered pricing on hours and trying to price on value. Mm-hmm. And, possibly get away with this with some of the bigger clients. But we've tried to do the defining hours and deliverables. So, for instance, one of the other chaps mentioned 5, 10, and 15. Well, if you're a client, it's setting expectations. If you say we're going to do 5 hours of SEO each month, how are you trying to set expectation levels at such that, look, if you invest another sort of 10 hours in SEO, we're going to be able to accelerate results. So it can sometimes, from our perspective, create a little bit of uncertainty, especially amongst the client. So that's why that model hasn't been successful for us, and we've tended to find that we've needed to spend more hours on a particular campaign than we build for. So it's in order to achieve the results and to keep the client happy, because obviously it's that long-term relationship that's quite key. Mm-hmm. So when we do that kind of audit and research phase, we're trying to get an idea as to how much value, increased exposure in the search results for certain key phrases will create for that business. And for instance, if they get a top 5 ranking for a certain key phrase, well, it could generate 50 to 100,000 pounds worth of business each year. If you're charging for 5 hours of work at anywhere between 70 and £100 an hour, then the client's doing particularly well out of that. So that's what I'm trying to move to, because I think people are starting to understand now that compared to paid search, in the long term, SEO will tend to deliver a better return on investment. So it's a bit like investing in the stock market, and that's why we're trying to move away from pricing on hours, because as an agency, it doesn't seem to be as profitable for us. And again, having to think about making a profit, but also keeping the client happy and getting them to a state where they feel that they've had value for money.
Yeah. Okay. I think you raised a good point there about like the return a customer can make, and understanding that. We'll come on to that, but I guess that's a really good point. And I can definitely see why you're doing it. And I think a lot of it will also come down to the type of client you're selling to as well, I guess, and their kind of budget restraints. If they're a bigger client, then perhaps it lends itself better to certain pitches or certain ways of pricing stuff compared to other clients. But okay, that's very helpful. So let's move on to this bit. So our monthly plans, I'll move on from that. I think we've kind of talked that. So I've got an interesting email from Lonnie, who's actually, I think Lonnie's on this call, isn't he? Yeah, Lonnie's on the call. Okay, cool.
I'm here.
Hey, Lonnie. So yeah, one thing I emailed Lonnie and said, can you ask some questions? Like, what's one thing that works well for you? And he said, because I'm in inbound marketing, it gets baked into the rest of what I'm doing, building in other work, bundling in. And then second one, what thing hasn't worked, and you put as a standalone offering has not worked. So do you want to just expand a little bit on what didn't work about standalone offering there, Lonnie?
Well, if you dig around the vast website, quick background, we didn't start off doing any of this. We are an SAP implementation company that eventually that started off on HubSpot. They invited us to be a partner. We've been doing this now for 14 or 15 years, and I'm an old dude. I've been doing SAP forever. So we've had a goodly number of clients on the inbound marketing side who we generally thought would be SAP partners to start with. And what they actually needed from me, because of the SAP background, was much more than either just inbound marketing, and certainly much more than just SEO, because no matter what term you use it, value-based selling, they only ever really care about one thing: make me more money. That's it. Yeah. That's the only goal. So these days, what works for me almost exclusively is, and this is both hardly any SAP clients, actually, it's all everybody else, is a revenue share. That way we're all aligned. So in order for me to do inbound marketing right, I have to build what HubSpot calls an information architecture, what you guys would call do thorough background, keyword research. And as that has evolved into a topic-based view of the world, we've gotten ever deeper. So, at this point, we do a whole lot of different things, but everything that we do is value-based. But it's really the key to it has been, unless and until I'm sure they know what they're selling and that they'll share those numbers with me, I don't even take them on as a client. And that was a big problem to start with. It's like, I can do a lot of things for you, and there's a lot of different models, points, value, blah, blah, blah. But if a client will trust me enough to open their books so that I can work with them to make sure they actually know what they're selling and I know what they're selling, then everything else just kind of falls in place. The SEO is a lot easier. The marketing is a lot easier. But I do a lot of sales coaching as well, because that was project management. But the sales part is the part that's the key here, is being able to speak to them about whether it's e-commerce or whether it's what Google refers to as offline conversion tracking, which is things that aren't things you sell like for SEO. That's what it means. It never really comes to me as can you just do SEO? That's not something I can put in a project plan with a work breakdown structure with defined deliverables, with measurable outcomes that I can say I did this and here's what it's worth to you. I do have calculators that I've developed that will tell you what SEO is worth. There's several of them out there, and I use that as a starting point. But to get to that to be useful, I have to come up with what Google terms a measurement plan, and what you might understand as a value case for what we're doing. Sorry, you let me go. So that's.
No, that's I'd like to learn just very quickly, like the revenue share. So I mean, that is like the ultimate value based way of doing it, right? It doesn't get any more value based.
Exactly.
How's a revenue share model work? How do you approach that?
I take if it's e-com, I take a percent of every sale. It's easiest. Like because of that, we're pretty good at Shopify these days. Shopify and HubSpot talk to each other. And so you have to see it. If it's not an e-com thing, like a deal, like I said, I've got a deep background in SAP. So some of my SAP partners, I'm literally helping them sculpt proposals, do everything that I used to do when I worked for the big guy. And I'll take, a good percent of that deal if and when it closes. And you should know that, we're not talking $10,000 deals here. We're talking very large deals that are going to be paid out over years. So I have to be very careful with the contracting to make sure I get my cut of the cash flows as they go along. Those are kind of each unique each time, but the model's basically the same. It's no different than if you're a sales guy getting comped on a portfolio of projects that you've sold in the past. It's the same basic concept.
Yanni, I've got a question, because we tried that in the past as well, and something that we also try to do at the onset with the client is trying to work out a customer value. What's the value of a customer worth? And obviously if you're selling shoes online, it's slightly different to if you're.
I've done shoes, by the way.
Yeah, in the sort of B2B professional services sector. So, for instance, if you're a lawyer, for instance, or and I can see that taking a revenue share would work when you can track a sale online.
I don't just take revenue share.
Right.
I'm getting paid for my services.
Yeah.
But that's the key part of it. That way, because otherwise they tend to just go ghost.
Yeah.
But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So that's it. So how do you track that?
Like I said, I got to have transparency in the book.
Yeah.
So, a typical setup is, sadly, they'll be a SAP partner, but they run QuickBooks. So we bring up the financials. But in HubSpot CRM, I can actually see the deal value, as long as they're honest with it. But then after that, you've got to go in and basically say, let's take a look at the books and see how it's going. Look, at this level, they have to be pretty honest, because they usually come back to me for other stuff. Unfortunately, that makes what I offer kind of unique. I can't replicate myself.
Yeah.
And that's the weakness of that. But I am what I am. But that's what it comes down to: trust and being able to look at the books. Trust but verified, as Mr. Reagan once said.
So I guess as an SEO agency, if you're trying to replicate that model, I'm sure the client would say, right, we're happy to do that, but only sort of reward you for sales that have been as a result of SEO. And as we know, there's so many different touch points during the sales process. Client might initially find you on sort of paid search, then they'll Google something else and find you on in the organic results, and then they download a white paper, and then you email them, and then the deal closes. So all sorts of different touch points, and this kind of omni-channel approach is quite important these days, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's why I love HubSpot.
Yeah.
Google, if you've paid attention, for the last 15 years, they've made it their life's mission so that you can't tell who closed, not by name.
Yeah.
But in HubSpot you can.
Yeah.
I know everything they ever did, or at least enough to answer what your concern is there. So, if I was, and I do a lot of PPC management for, a few select clients, and yes, I can do attribution, but of course, Google, they're hiding those names from you. So it's, e-commerce is raw numbers. You don't really care about the name, but for these large deals, you do. So in HubSpot, you can see, okay, they came in off a paid ad, but then they downloaded 3 things, ran a calculator, read 7 blogs, blah, blah, blah. You very much know exactly what they did before they turned into a customer, and you know what the sales team did as well. And most of the time, as an inbound marketing agency, at least in my case, you were involved in setting every step of that up and coaching their sales team. Now that's how that plays out. So Google, I don't know if you what your expertise is on PPC. They have this whole thing about attribution, blah blah blah. Google Analytics, but you can see an awful lot, but you can't see the name. However, with the right system in place, and I think you can do this with the other guys as well, Pardo and Marketo, and for sure.
Yeah.
If you're a big dollar guy, you can do it with SAP. But I'm HubSpot, so that's what I do. And so it so far it tells me everything that they did. It tells me how long they were in the system. Keep in mind, most of the deals that I'm talking about here takes at least 6 months to 2 years to longer than that. Whereas e-com stuff, it's happening pretty fast, right?
Yeah.
So I don't really care about the name. I just care about, you bought a pair of shoes and here's my 10% or whatever the cut was on that one. But for the large deals, it's a much more intimate relationship between me and my clients, but there's systems have to be in place to be able to not just establish that trust, but to be able to look into it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, interesting. Really, really interesting. I've not known that before personally, but like you say, amazing model, but very hard to scale unless you can replicate yourself. Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Lonnie. That was a really interesting insight, and it's made me think. In future presentations, I've got another option now for pricing SEO, which I didn't have before. So.
There you go.
Right. Okay. So, upselling and bundling. I guess what the kind of point I'm trying to make with this slide is selling SEO isn't just going out and just selling it, as a standalone product and thinking about it like that. It's thinking about how can you bundle it into your existing sales. So if you're already doing web design, if you're already doing PPC, if you're already doing social media, whatever it is, one of the easiest ways that you can start to sell SEO is just bundling it in. Thinking about how can we add it in as part of the product that we're selling, or the ongoing retainer that we're going to sell afterwards. And there's kind of, I guess talking about a continuum again. You've kind of got, you could just do it as almost like supplementary SEO, just like really easy. Okay, you're selling a website. Can you add on a few more bolt-ons to that website sale that include SEO? So it might be like, we'll optimize the website, so we'll create all your metadata and your meta descriptions for launch, kind of like one-off activities on that. We'll create that content. We'll do that kind of initial technical optimization. A little bit like, I guess, how, the Wixes and the Squarespace says that the website is SEO optimized from scratch. It's not. There's still more that needs to be done. Perhaps you're just bolting onto that and actually just taking it that next step further so that the website fundamentals are more optimized. But then, you could then just add on full SEO packages, whatever they will be, however you decide to price it, however you build based on the discussion we've had today, can you bolt on an ongoing package? And this is one point that I think a lot of agencies who aren't SEO agencies and, it's their secondary service, their tertiary service, whatever, it's an additional service. Sometimes, there can be a fear to sell SEO, but actually you're at such an advantage, having a relationship with a client. Lonnie's a great example of this. Having that relationship with the client trusts you, the client knows you're competent in particular areas. That actually, if you can just display that you can do SEO as well, right, then they'll bite your hand off, or they should do, because it's hard work. It's hard work going, if you're a small business, you've already found someone to build the website, do whatever the service is. To then go and repeat that process to find someone to do SEO is a pain in the ass, because you're probably going to make a few mistakes. You're probably going to go with an agency that doesn't work. You're going to go through all of these kind of rings of failures before you find someone good. So being in that position where you've already got a relationship with that client, really gives you an advantage to selling SEO. Does that resonate with anyone here? Do you find that actually for where you have upsold, it doesn't just have to be SEO, but because you've got that relationship, that you've used that as the kind of the foundation for then going, what about if I do this for you as well?
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Definitely. I've found if I'm doing like a website job, just doing the full development, I'll always say, look, why not take this option? It's depending on what they want, it's 300 or 400 quid a month extra. Basically just as a retainer. What I'll do is give them 5 hours worth of SEO work, and then they've got me on call if anything goes wrong with the website, or say they want some little minor things done, like new products added in or something like that. They've got me there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if they need it. And I find I do get a lot of success from that.
Nice.
It's just a nice little like stream of income as well. Like 9 times out of 10 they don't bother contacting you for it anyway. So
because they trust you.
Yeah, you get left to crack on and just do that SEO work and job done.
Yeah.
Easiest money you'll make.
Yeah.
In a way, it's such.
You're building upon that trust that you've already built up through
definitely
the work that you've done. Yeah. So I mean, Amanda, obviously you're thinking about selling SEO. Can you think of some clients already immediately? You're like, oh, do you know what? Maybe they trust me. They might be a good first person to go to. Oh, you're on mute, Amanda.
Sorry about that. Yeah, definitely. I've got some clients that I'll contact and put it forward to. I have done with a couple of them, but they don't seem to want to pay for it. I don't know. I maybe got the wrong clients. But even if I'm saying like £100 or £200 a month for doing a minimum amount, they don't seem to want to come back with that. And I don't know why that is really.
Have you shown them the kind of the size of the prize, like what opportunities there are there, like perhaps some keywords that they're not ranking for that they should be ranking for?
Oh no, I've not done that. Maybe that's why. Yeah. So if I look at that.
Sometimes just, I'll mention it later on, but we're going to run out of time anyway. But I've often found, and Paul, this is off the back of your email actually, that I was thinking about, because you sent me yesterday about your process, and your process is brilliant. So I'm just going to I want to go to that quickly now.
The thing I was going to say, Amanda, is competitors. Sometimes, if you can show them, that your competitors are doing well, that can sometimes help them to think, okay, my competitors are here, why aren't I there? And there's an element of competitive parity, and basically they feel that they could be missing out on opportunities to generate new sales and leads.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, that's so true. If you can do both right, if you can show them that there's a keyword that their customers use that they're not ranking for, then that has power, because they're like, oh, that's missed sales, that's missed customers. But then if you can say you're not ranking for it, but John down the road, who's your main competitor, is ranking for it, then you're introducing the competitive nature of business owners, and then it's like a double whammy. That usually is, and that is usually enough to get them to go, yeah, not where do I sign, but to pique their interest, should we say?
Yeah. Okay, great, thank you.
Which leads nicely to here, Paul, because I really liked your response here. So I emailed Paul and I said, what's one thing that works well? And then you've gone, not been packaging SEO till we start using Hike, but now able to provide a measurable service. We usually ask what works well and what doesn't. So Paul, is this when a lead comes to you, when you reach out to a lead? How does a lead come to you in this kind of scenario?
Whichever way it comes, really, whether we've reached out or whether we're asked about this, that's always where we'll start, because otherwise you're just second guessing. Yeah.
And I love here. So, you've got to ask what works well and what doesn't. You just know that the answer is going to be they don't get enough sales or inquiries. And then in the back of your head, they're going to say this next thing. So from there, we ask how they measure traffic engagement. In many cases, they use gut feeling rather than evidence. And I would say that's 99.9% of cases, right? Everyone kind of nodding here that they don't. I mean, there's a few reasons, because I guess unless you're looking at the books, actually, as we've kind of explained, unless you're using something like HubSpot, that it's pretty hard to track everything. It's really hard with GA or whatever you use to actually accurately track where sales came from, or maybe not how many sales you've had, but where they've come from with accuracy, especially because of the different touch points and everything. So yeah, that's That's really interesting. And then here
we've had really good success with one client recently over a 6-month period, and he keeps telling me though that he doesn't get many inquiries. Recently went on holiday and we found that on mobile, one of the phone numbers on his site was actually his personal mobile and not the business one. And we hadn't picked this up, but he went on holiday and he got in touch with me very quickly to say that his partner's getting hacked off with the calls that keep coming in. And I thought, well, on one hand, you're telling me you're not getting inquiries, but now they're a nuisance.
So I guess this is the thing, isn't it? How often is it genuine when people say this, business owners say this? Because some of them are genuine, right? And they maybe aren't getting inquiries, even when they are getting sales, even when they're, they're ranking well. But some of them, you just sometimes know that actually they might just be having it a little bit to try and just get you to work harder. So there's a good tip, put their mobile number on there. And then you said here, Paul, so you offer a high-level audit and report over a call. Do you want to just go into that in a little bit more detail?
Well, I think it was, I can't remember who it was mentioned earlier on about this this initial review, and it is really a piece of work that we charge for as well. Basically to point out to them where we think improvements can be made and where they're missing out. And many of our clients have gone down the route of assisted SEO, so they're capable of making their own changes to their website, but they just don't know what to do. So this is what we do. We tease this out first of all with a questionnaire. Once we have the questionnaire, we then write up it's just a spreadsheet, a strategy document, and tell them which pages we're going to target, which keywords, and what actions need to be taken by them or by us. So it's very transparent, the whole process.
And how much do you charge for that audit?
It's quite cost effective. I mean, and to put this into perspective, this is for the majority of our clients, which are SMEs, and you'd just be looking at around £250 for that. And it's a sprat to catch a mackerel. Yeah.
How do you sell that then? So obviously then this is just for you to decide what they
because in the main, this is an upsell from existing clients. Okay. And it's a bit of a tricky one as well, because if we've built the website either recently or in the past, there's always the temptation for them to think, well, you obviously didn't do it properly in the first place. But we know that's not the case.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, right? So how do you get around that? If someone comes to you with that objection, how do you respond?
Because a little bit in the same way that Wix and GoDaddy, etc., are saying that theirs is optimized for SEO. We design our websites with all of the core features, but if they don't use those features, then it won't work. And usually, because most of the websites that we build are on a content management system, they'll wreck their SEO over a period of time.
Yeah, entropy, right?
In fact, I did mention somewhere here that we've had this recently where we've been working on something only to find that the client's going in and undoing everything that we've done.
Yeah, that's so frustrating when that happens. And then they go, our SEO's not performing. Why is it not performing? Yeah. It's like because you've removed all the SEO.
They very quickly hold their hands up when they realise that you know what they've done.
Yeah. It's just sometimes it's just how long has it been like that for though? It's like the damage that's been done. Right. Well, look. I think. Oh, Colin. Yeah, go for it. Raising your hand. I love that.
I want to ask Ross a question. Ross, when you talked about those sort of £300, £400, £500 a month, I don't know if you said that, but that extra little revenue stream for I interpreted it as the optimization. So because you've got access to the website and then you just can do those things. Because we don't develop websites, we don't actually often have access to the website. So what are the sorts of things that you are doing in that £300 or £400, £500?
So what we generally do is, since we've already got prior access to the website, with there being a bolt-on that we offer as part of the package. We would just do obviously do the keyword research, see what the competitors are ranking for, and then just start literally going for it on that. Literally optimize one word a month, pour all of the energy into that one keyword just to start getting ranking up. And then obviously the next month we'll go to the next one, then just keep following on like that.
So it would be classic, like, you know, SEO titles, meta descriptions, a little bit of rehash. You're not rewriting all the content, but you're tweaking the content, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we just literally, it's little tweaks here and there.
Yeah. Because I think that's what we could naturally upsell. We are giving
definitely.
We are giving feedback to our clients. Look, you've reached this stage now where we're telling you to optimize for this, this, and this, but we realize you're probably not doing it. And for an extra £200 or £300 a month, why didn't you just give us access to your site, and we can take care of that. So,
definitely. As well as that, we've added the scope in as well for us to be able to do any sort of changes they want to the website along with it. So like if they want the way a page looks changed, we can jump in and do all of that as well. And it's just a little upsell. It seems to work really well. Most of them are small businesses. They've got no idea how to do it themselves. So rather than sit there and be stuck for hours, it'd be like, it's easiest to get someone in to do it than it is.
Yeah, I'm going to persevere with making that more available, because
definitely.
Yeah. Thanks, Wes. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Leverage the trust that you've already got, Colin, as well, right?
Yeah.
Trust you, so leverage that, sure. But guys, we're gonna have to wrap it up. That hour's flown by. So didn't get through all the slides, but I think we got through most of it in conversation, which is what I wanted. So that's brilliant. Thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. You found it helpful. Picked up a couple of things that would just be helpful. I will send out the recording tomorrow, so you'll get the recording tomorrow. And if you've got anything else that you want to post or any questions, I don't know, probably put it on the Facebook group. Put it on the Hike SEO for Agencies Facebook group. And if any remaining questions or whatever, then we can continue discussion on that. Awesome.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Catch you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks, Andy.
Yeah, see you later.